Let's now welcome Michael Louis, Chairman of the Independent Candidate Association. Welcome, Michael, to Pitso. First question, what do you make of yesterday's judgment by the Concord?
Well, as you heard, we definitely accept it because it's the apex court and we believe in the independence of the Constitutional Court. And also, I think the judges definitely applied their mind. But as it goes in legal matters, it doesn't say that we always agree with the interpretation because law cases are always about technical things. And the Concord made their judgment on rationality and also overhang, and they said that there is, they believe that there's no merit, that the independent candidates' votes are subsidiary to that of political parties, which we don't agree. So we've got mixed feelings about it, and but we do accept it, and it's back to the drawing board.
So how will the judgment impact the way that independent candidates will mobilize support or their plans to campaign?
Well, I think it's definitely back to the drawing board, as I said, because the big thing is whether we like it or not, and whatever the judgment is, our interpretation is still that for independent candidates to get a seat in Parliament, they still need about 88 to 92,000 votes, while a political party needs 45,000 votes. So I think what independent candidates are going to do now is they're going to say, but listen, if we have to get double the votes that political parties must get, shouldn't we rather be part of a political party system or a civil movement? So I think it's going to be difficult. My positioning as chairman of ICA is that we have to make it as conducive and laying a fair playing ground for our candidates to be able to participate, to increase our democracy. And the thing is about us, we need new faces and new voices. People are looking for new players on the political landscape, and we need to do all to encourage that.
So as an organization, how do you make it fair? You said that you need to make it fair for other political parties. How do you guys do that?
Well, it's going to be difficult because the big thing is I really believe that independent candidates is not your everybody person. It is a person of stature, it is a person of experience that the public are wanting to see, like Thuli Madonsela, for instance. We're wanting to make it easy for them to participate. So we're going to see what we can do. So I think we're going to be much more streamlined and focused in identifying who those leaders are. Because this is a test case. This is a maturing democracy. One thing we know for sure, that it's a human right for an independent candidate to stand. And we must make it as right as possible. I don't want the elections to come out and the people say independents can't add to our maturing democracy, because that will be the wrong outcome.
So what are your views on how the Concord differentiated independent candidates to political party representation in Parliament?
Well, I think the interpretation was wrong. And so I think you're going to see a test case of this. And let me give the viewers an example of this. The test case will be that, for sure, it would be that an independent candidate will not get the threshold of, say, 67,000, of 90,000, they'll get 67,000 votes and not belong to a political, and not get a seat in Parliament. While a political party of 43,000 votes will have a seat in Parliament. Now, if that happens, it could be interesting to see post-elections, what does the independent candidate that got 67,000 votes not get a seat in Parliament, but a political party of 43,000 did, which means that the Concord in their interpretation was wrong.
So you are saying that it was wrong. Maybe just elaborate what then needs to be done for it to be correct or to be right.
I think the only way now, because you know, it's finality and we've accepted the judgment. So I think the only way to do is now is to run the elections. And I think that's important. We always want to be seen as a constructive force in our political dispensation. We want the elections to go ahead. Our task is to encourage and motivate, train and equip independent candidates, educate the public about the new political system, and then see how we're going forward.
So you had asked the court to allow the independent candidates to contest 350 out of the 400 National Assembly seats, which was declined. So the 200 out of 200 seats split remains. Please explain to us more about this.
Yes, I think a lot of people think, now, how did we get to the amount of 350 seats? Well, what happens, because we always said that independent candidates must get double the votes of a political party. So what our actuaries did is they said, what must the seat allocation be of the 400 to make it equal? And so we worked out that if it's 350-50, if the split was that, then an independent candidate will need 45,000 votes to get a seat in Parliament, and a political party needs 45,000 votes to get into Parliament. So it will equalize the playing field. Now it's back to 200. So our summary and our judgment is that a political independent still needs to get double that of a political party.
Why does an independent need to get double?
Well, that's the whole thing, because we don't qualify for compensatory seats. So out of the 400, independent candidates can only participate in the 200 and not in the 200 compensatory seats. So let me give the viewers a good example of that. In an unknown situation, independent candidates get all 200 seats in Parliament. Now Parliament needs 400 seats. They can't participate in the compensatory seats, so Parliament will only have 200 seats. So we believe that that's unconstitutional.
Okay, so the Concord also ruled that 15% signature requirements needed by candidates to contest on both the national and provincial elections is invalid, and granted an interim relief of 1,000 signatures. Can you please just tell us, what is your take on this?
No, well, we very much support it, because it was part of our application of One South Africa movement. And the big thing about that is that the Electoral Act said it's 15% of the quota of a province. Now, just to put it in context for the viewer, if an independent had to get 14,000 votes, and it takes 5 minutes just to get a signature for them to support it, that independent candidate will have to employ 50 people for 6 months just to get the 15,000 signatures. So we believe that's unconstitutional. It breaches the constitutional thing that every citizen has equal rights and protection. And I'm glad that we won that case and that the Concord supported us.
So do you think this will help going forward in more elections to come?
Well, I think we're a maturing democracy. I think one of the big takes about this is two things. The one thing is the importance of civil society organizations. We need leaders and organizations to challenge the trajectory of our electoral system. People want change, and people are wanting something new. The second thing is that I think is always important, and why I'm so pleased about this judgment, because the facts are, if we didn't challenge this Electoral Act now, anybody that went through the elections, any party or independent candidate that wasn't satisfied with the result, could have challenged the Electoral Act and said it was unconstitutional, and then we had really a constitutional crisis. So I think we prohibited that, and I think that's why our efforts were worthwhile.
So you mentioned about the democracy maturing. Maybe you can just give us points that points out that really our democracy is maturing, considering that we have so many things going on in our country.
Well, I think it's the whole issue that the Zondo Commission and the Motlanthe commissions of the high-level report said we need a more accountable, responsible government. And so that's what we're trying to do, because we've always promoted a constituency-based system where people can choose their own leaders. This system still doesn't give us an accountable system. So that's why we keep on pushing, and that's why the minister will be nominating what we call the electoral panel in the next couple of months to redraft this whole Electoral Act, because they understand that this act isn't final. It's always meant to be transitional. And so we're excited about it. This is just pushing the boundaries. This is about creating new people to come onto the playing field. And seeing that you're nice and young, Ali, we want young people to come and stand. You know, I think most people are like myself, are now grey hairs. We need to hand over the baton to new leaders to come onto the political landscape. So
you mentioned about redrafting the Act. Will it have an impact looking forward?
Definitely. I really can surmise that the new Act will be a constituency-based system and totally different than the Act today.
Thank you so much, Michael, for joining us here on Pitso today.
Thank you, Ali, for the interview.
That was Michael Louis, chairman of the Independent Candidate Association, talking about yesterday's landmark Constitutional Court judgments on the Electoral Amendment Bill. We'll be back right after this short break. Welcome back to Pitso here on SABC Lehae. The EFF wants the Western Cape High Court to order National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula to appear before Parliament's Powers and Privilege Committee next week. The committee is set to deliberate on the removal of EFF's members of Parliament from the House on 2 separate occasions in 2022. First, when President Cyril Ramaphosa was delivering his budget vote speech, and when he was in the House for an oral question and answer session.
Chaos ensued in June last year during President Ramaphosa's budget vote, resulting in EFF MPs being removed from the House. 2 months later, in August, during an oral question and answer session with the President, EFF MPs again disrupted the House and were also removed. The party's lawyers say Mapisa-Nqakula took the decision to remove the MPs and she should appear before the committee to give her side so that her story could be tested. The EFF has given Parliament until the close of business on Tuesday to indicate whether Mapisa-Nqakula will be subpoenaed. If the NA does not respond, the matter will return to court on Wednesday afternoon for a hearing. The NA is set to consider the report of the Powers and Privileges Committee on Tuesday. It proposes the 6 MPs, including party leader Julius Malema, be suspended for the month of February 2024 for storming the stage during this year's State of the Nation address. Lula Mamatya, SABC News, Western Cape High Court.
The ANC has failed to settle the 102 million rand debt plus interest and costs paid for election banners ahead for the 2019 general election. The sheriff of the court arrived at ANC headquarters in Johannesburg planning to seize assets to cover the amount owed.
The deputy sheriff should not have been here. We are not certain of the reasons behind creating such a spectacle when the ANC had already communicated formally that it has approached the Constitutional Court. It is very curious, as we say in our statement, as to why the deputy sheriff was here. In a correspondence between our legal manager with the sheriff, a verbal apology was transmitted to the ANC. But I did, on behalf of the Secretary General, request that we do have a formal apology because this was quite serious. We had members of the media here for something that should not have happened. Because if you look at the Superior Court's Act of 2013 is very specific in Section 18 and Section 49 about what you do under circumstances where there's been appeal to a higher court of the land.
To analyze these issues, let's welcome Dr. Levin Ndou, a political analyst from Tshwane University of Technology. Dr. Ndou, hello and welcome to Pitso here on SABC Lehae. Firstly, what are the consequences of storming on stage when the president is on the podium, and could it be referred to as charging at the president?
Good day to you, Ali, and indeed I want to greet the viewers at home. Well, I think it's important to note that any form of disruption, any form of creating disorder and disturbance is something that is totally not acceptable, especially when the entire nation has its interest is at stake. But about storming and to a certain extent charging onto the state president it could not be a matter that has to be taken very lightly, because I think there could have been a reason why those who are in the parliamentary leadership chose to use charging, because that could be something that is associated with a very, very serious threat. The expectation is that from everyone, especially the public, is that you don't expect members of parliament, firstly, to be disruptive and also to charge onto the state president, because the purpose of the occasion is to ensure that the public is also getting informed of what government is actually doing. And of course, you would expect those who feel that there has been an element of charging onto the state president to ensure that there has to be punishment by those who have actually participated in that act of activity. One other area, in my view, that has a potential to create a big argument is the fact that when rules are made, you would hardly find a rule that talks about members having to charge onto the president or any other person in parliament, because normally you don't expect members of parliament to charge onto the state president. So I know that could be an area of argument, but I will have to leave that to my colleagues in the legal profession. But the normal expectation is that you will not expect members of parliament to charge onto the state president. Another aspect that we need to look at is that there are certain rules and regulations that are there that determines how members are supposed to conduct themselves. But those remain social rules. But at the same time, human beings are also guided by what is referred to as natural rules that are not supposed to be written down, but which are supposed to be known and guide human behavior.
So now the EFF wants the Powers and Privileges Committee to summon National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula to appear before the committee next week. What are the chances of this happening?
I think it will depend on the arrangement on what specifically the Speaker of Parliament will be expected to do or to say. But the bottom line, in my view, is that the council or the legal representative for the EFF would be trying to use this opportunity to ask specific questions to the Speaker of Parliament, and of course, dwelling on issues that are actually not part of the rules and regulations in Parliament. And they would also want to use this opportunity to trick the Speaker so that the members of the EFF have to go out scot-free. Of course, one should expect that, because those that are in the legal profession's role is to ensure that those that they are representing should actually always be seen to be getting out of the hook, because that is exactly why they actually chose this profession.
Dr. Ndo, would you agree with the claims that the members of parliament are displaying delay tactics regarding disciplinary processes?
Well, my view is that it will actually depend on where one stands. If, in my view, it works for them to delay, they will actually do so. And also, bearing in mind that in the near future, we will be heading towards the general elections, and this matter would be belonging in the previous administration. So if the delays works in their favor, they'll actually make sure that they actually do so that they don't get punished, and they continue the work of Parliament and continue to receive their salaries. At the same time, there are those who will say that any process that has to be undertaken should actually be very fair and not to be biased, and all the processes have to be followed to the letter So there is nothing wrong with them actually opting for a delay because they would want to see all processes being fulfilled. And hence I'm saying that it actually depends on where one stands on this matter.
So just to now move to the ANC, what is your view on the ANC's debt and the sheriff of the Gauteng High Court rocking up at the Luthuli House on Monday morning?
Apart from what other people describe as the drama that happened at Luthuli House, the fact of the matter is that anyone who owes someone whatever they owe, they've got a responsibility to pay. If the ANC is supposed to pay a certain amount of money to the company that they owe, they should act responsibly and do so. My expectation would have been that you don't need the ruling party to have a situation where they are in dispute for not paying for the services that has been rendered. If indeed it's something that is supposed to be dealt with the law, my expectation also is that the ANC should be seen to be abiding by the laws, especially now they've taken the matter to the Constitutional Court. But the basics for me is that there would be no need for the ANC and anyone to be forced to pay for your debt through the courts, because that is an obligation that you have when you enter into a debt, but it also demonstrates a degree of responsibility for ensuring that you pay for the services that have been rendered, especially when you requested such services to be rendered for you.
Dr. Ndo, let's quickly focus on the Concord judgment. How will the Electoral Amendment Act judgment benefit independent candidates?
Well, I think they do. And even though it is not everything that the independent candidates or those who are for independent candidates wanted, I think the biggest win for the independent candidates has been the reduction of the signatures that are required for those who want to stand as independent candidates. That, for me, it's a big win for the independent candidates. Number two, the number of independent candidates with this ruling might also increase. And that, in my view, would give our democracy divergent views if indeed these people are actually going to be voted into parliament. And the most important aspect of this ruling is that democracy is the winner, in the sense that it is not only political parties that would have the monopoly of contesting elections. All South African citizens who have got an interest also have to campaign and also for contest for elections. And that will give our parliament a very broader representation, and divergent and other views are also going to be a factor in our national body politic.
Just the last question before you leave. How does this then affect the country's politics?
Well, there could be shortcomings in the sense that when you have got independent candidates and their name is self-explanatory, they are independent from anybody, and it talks to issues that relate to accountability, then there could be a possibility for them not to account and actually take decisions that are only in the best interest of themselves and not in the best interest of the nation. Another disadvantage for me would be the amount of work that independent candidates will be expected to do in parliament. Remember, you have got a lot of committees in parliament, a lot of work that has to be done outside parliament. So that would put a lot of strain on independent candidates, because they'll be required to participate in all these processes, and indeed it will require a lot of energy on their part. But another important one is that during the campaigns, independent candidates will require a lot of energy, both human and financial resources, because you'd agree with me that South Africa is vast. They must cover the entire country, and at the same time, financial resources will be required because these people will be moving from one place to the other, and that will require them to dip very down into their personal pockets.
Now, the South African taxi industry has come a long way since the very first taxi was introduced more than half a century ago. The birth of this industry was a direct result of the industrialization. The emergence is for both opportunities for black people to advance economically as well as to provide a service to the people. Today, we are speaking to Bafana Magagula, who is the Chief Strategic Manager at Santaco, where we will unpack concerning matters to do with the taxi industry in this festive season. Hi Bafana, and welcome to Pitso here on SABC Lehae. Firstly, does the sector check if taxis are roadworthy, especially looking that now we've reached the festive season and a lot of people will be traveling?
Thank you so much for bringing us to your show. As per our media statement, Santaco launched a program 13 years ago, that is in 2010, to take care of vehicles that are carrying, that means taxis that are carrying our passengers from one destination to another. The program started on a festive season, like your Easter, your Christmas and New Year's holidays. It has now extended to be a program that runs 24/7. We have approximately 168 Hlokomela vehicles across the country that are specifically concentrating on the Hlokomela, looking at roadworthiness of the vehicles and also looking at the healthiness of the driver and also taking care of the customers' behavior from the driver, that the passengers are taken care of, customer care, and so on.
Mr. Magagula, what are the plans to ensure that there are less accidents this festive season?
Look, let me start by saying that prior to the program, the taxi industry was blamed for over 50% fatalities. And after the program was launched a few years later, only 6% of fatalities are said to be contributed by the taxi industry, which we are also not happy, would like to bring them to 0%. The plans for 2023 are that we are already, hence we have released a statement already. We have started on the 21st of October with a prayer meeting which was held in Free State, hosted by the president of Santaco, Mr. Abner Tsebe, beginning to pray for less accident, as well as the minister having launched the Arrive Alive campaign on the 26th of November with a prayer as well. We were part of it. The plans are that we are on the road, at taxi ranks, at junctions, and everywhere where we know passengers are being carried from one destination to another, making sure that they are traveling in safer vehicles, and also we're making sure that they are traveling on time, and we are discouraging the passengers that wants to travel at night, as visibility at night is not so good.
So now, what is your approach to drivers' fatigue, more of those drivers who drive long distance?
We discourage drivers from driving more than 2 hours without a stop. We encourage them to drink a lot of water as it is hot, and also to rest every 200 kilometers or even before that, so that they can reach their destination safe without fatigue.
So why is that every season there tends to be a price increase within the taxi industry?
Well, unfortunately, people who don't use taxis think there are price increases in the taxi industry. If you look at other modes of transport, We are way below, maybe 60% below what buses are charging, what trains are charging, and what aeroplanes are charging. We still believe that the commuters that we transport are us, are our community. Some increases that may seem to be there and there are not increases that actually measure against the petrol increases, are increases that are long overdue. However, I must emphasize that it is there and there. It's a drop in an ocean where prices are being increased. It's increases that were 3 years, 4 years, in arrears.
Mr. Magagula, how do you then address unfairness and complaints from passengers?
We definitely do. If we receive a complaint, we attend to it, and the driver will be either suspended or expelled, depending on the nature of the complaint that has been reported.
Mr. Magagula, just to go back on the driver's fatigue, I wanted to ask, have you guys ever considered that maybe there should be 2 drivers on long distance distances? Because when you look at, maybe the driver might rest, but the body is still tired. So do you guys ever consider that if a trip is very long, maybe there should be 2 drivers?
Look, unfortunately, if you're carrying 15 passengers and you have 2 drivers in that vehicle, it is very difficult. We are not subsidized. So at times, with the 22 seaters, we do try, depending on how long the driver or that distance will be and how many hours. But it is, at the moment, I must be honest, it is still a very difficult exercise. However, we are encouraging it, and we hope that in the future we will be heard by government and we will be subsidized. And if that happens, it will be an easiest thing to do, that we make sure that even in those small passenger vehicles like a 15-seater, we have 2 drivers. Otherwise, if we enforce it now, it will then be a burden to the passengers, because then we will have to increase the fares, which passengers will not afford.
Mr. Magagula, we are now in the festive season. What advices can you give to the drivers and the passengers?
Advices that we can give to the drivers is that please sleep enough, do not drink, actually not drink and drive, avoid drinking when you know you are working with passengers, and avoid drinking acid drinks. Try and drink as much water, still water, as much as you can as a driver, and also respect the rules of the road. We believe that if we all drive carefully, there will be no accidents at all. We must all take responsibility. We therefore say to our drivers, wherever the road sign says 60 kilos or 40 kilos, just obey it. When it's raining, just go as low as or as slow as you can in order to avoid any pothole that you may hit with your tire without noticing, and kill passengers and yourself, of course. And also to passengers, we are advising you that please look at that driver. If you see anything funny, do report to that driver so that we can assist. And when you do so, just try, and before you get into a vehicle, I know we all have, or most of us have, smartphones. Take a picture of the number plate, and also when you report the matter, tell us that the Kumbi was from Johannesburg to Polokwane, and where is this happening? It is between Bela and maybe Mkopane, so that we are able to track and trace that driver. Sometimes we are able to track him immediately because our Shokomela vehicles are on the road as we speak.
Thank you so much.
And also to the owners of the vehicles, please, owner of that vehicle, do not give a vehicle that you know to the driver, a vehicle that you know is unroadworthy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Magagula, for your time here on Pitso. Enjoy the rest of your day.